To the Point with Kelly Dunn and Michael Williams.
Since becoming mayor less than a year ago, Jeri Muoio has shaken up City Hall. Police Chief Delsa Bush is gone. Finance Director Randy Sherman is out. And Housing Director Val Marie Turner left just after a year in the job. What's going on in downtown West Palm Beach? Our guest is just the person to ask. Good morning and welcome to the Point. Kelly Dunn is on assignment. West Palm Beach Mayor Jeri Muoio is here to answer the questions. We thank you so much, Mayor, for being with us this day.
Happy to be here.
Rounding into that first year of office where you've really had a chance to get your feet wet in the mayor's chair. Describe your management style. It's a good place to begin as we look at some of the changes and some of the pros and some of the criticisms. Talk about your management style. How do you see yourself?
Well, yeah, I'd love to. I am acting as the CEO of a pretty big group. We have 1,500 employees. We have a $300 million budget that includes debt. So it's critical to manage it and to develop it. And I've been in management before, so I've done this before. And
for those uninitiated, talk about that briefly.
Well, I worked in schools, and a lot of people will quickly say, "Oh, she was a teacher," and I would be very proud to say I was a teacher, but I wasn't. I worked as a school administrator for a number of years, assistant superintendent of schools.
Biggest surprise as manager this first year?
Well, we have, probably the most difficult part is the intense and ongoing public scrutiny. And it's something you sort of have to learn to live with and be grounded in yourself and know that you're doing the right thing and move forward.
And the most intense scrutiny that you think you've come under?
Well, I think there's been some accusations about corruption in the city and things like that going on, and that's very upsetting to me, and I have to remember that such criticisms are aimed at the position and not necessarily a person, although sometimes they're very personal.
And among other things, you're talking about audit money, a project, federal audit money that was overseen by the city, and back and forth about an audit and whether you all handled it properly. At the end of the day, not that all of that by any stretch of the imagination was during your time as mayor, nonetheless, do you think there were problems with the audit? Do you think the city could have done better? Are there more problems or surprises to be revealed?
I think we can always do better. My philosophy, and I say this to the people I work with every day, even on our best day we can be better, so we're always striving to do a better job. A lot of what occurred before I got there, and could we have done a better job? Absolutely. Are we going to do a better job? Absolutely.
And we're talking about money that was meant to be used to help disadvantaged neighborhoods. At the end of the day, was that money misspent in your mind, as has been said?
No, I think...
Or alleged, I should say.
Yeah, no, it has not been misspent. I'd invite you to come and visit some of the homes that were built on with that money. We have new homes in Coleman Park, something like 60 new homes. People are living in these homes. We've seen a change in that area. So people forget that there were results, and the results are that, in fact, homes were built and rehabilitated, and now people are living in them.
Mayor, you talked about being a CEO. That's how you see yourself. That's what the job entails. Did you feel that you needed fresh faces? The police chief gone. She at the time had said about a long-running debate about radio systems. What does the mayor know? You said, let's let bygones be bygones, essentially, and didn't want to get into that. She's gone. You've had other changes at the top in management, housing, and finance. Did you feel you needed this shakeup? Did they leave because they didn't fit what this CEO, as mayor, feels she needs?
It depends on which position you're talking about. Our housing...
The police chief, let's start there.
Yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, she did leave because our philosophies differed. And
fundamentally, how?
Well, I had very high expectations of our police department in terms of reaching out to the community, being part of the community, being at public meetings, answering emails, being involved with what's going on at the community level. I thought that needed improvement.
Not enough community policing in your mind?
Community policing and community outreach and just community interaction.
Housing and finance, those positions too. Was that friction, or they didn't fit your vision?
The housing director left of her own free will. She took another position, and that had nothing to do with my vision or whatever it was. The finance department was a change that I made.
You had talked last week to us on News Channel 5 about the fact it might take into May or June to find a new police chief. Is that inordinately long for such a pivotal, crucial position for one of the core cities in our region? And why is it, quote unquote, taking so long?
Well, it's not inordinately long. If you look at the average time, it's pretty typical in terms of doing a national search, which is what we're doing. In the meantime, however, I want to say that we have two excellent acting police chiefs who are doing a wonderful job. I'm just so impressed with the work that they've been doing, and we can see the differences in the communities. We've increased community policing. We have police on bikes in the north end, and the south end. They are at every community meeting, answering questions and being there. So you can already see the shift in that kind of community interaction.
And these people we're talking about are?
Co-chief.
For our non-West Palm Beach audience.
Mary Olson and Brian Cumberland.
And do you perhaps see a new permanent chief in one of those two?
Well, we are going to have a lot of applications. I hope they both apply, and we'll take a look at that.
Let's talk about the waterfront. $30 million spent on the waterfront. Any city, West Palm Beach is not alone, trying to find new ways to revitalize the downtown core. Talk about the development, where you see the highs and lows there as we move along, trying to redevelop the waterfront, and where the money's going to come from to make sure that we can bring this to fruition if it comes off the blueprint page.
Yeah. Well, I think our waterfront is such an asset to downtown. You know, just this week I have friends from the north visiting, and they just can't believe how beautiful it is and what a great space it is. So I see nothing but ups in our downtown waterfront. We have wonderful programs that take place there. Lots of people visiting for the green market or for Sunday at the waterfront, which was just this last Sunday. I was there. It was packed. We have learned, as we have used it, there are some improvements that we can make, and we're working on those improvements. Additionally, we're working with Mr. Ed Euler from Centennial Park in Chicago to think about the next phase. It's not changing it or redoing it. It's what's the next phase for our waterfront, and he's helping us to envision that. And you
see it as what?
Well, I see a lot of different things, but one of the critical pieces is tying in the different green spaces. We have the Meyer Amphitheater, we have our Great Lawn, we have our old Helen Wilkes site to the north, we have Trinity Park and Post Park, so we want to tie all of those in and make it a real linear park as well. We've got some dreams of maybe a restaurant at the end of our dock, or doing something different with the Meyer Amphitheater so it's used more. All of those will be put into a plan, which we haven't yet adopted. It's still in the conceptual phase.
Financing is always the issue. Where are you going to come up with the money?
Absolutely. Financing is an issue, and we really see this next phase as a public-private partnership. We will be looking for private money.
One observer said to me, what's going on with the city docks? Nice new city docks, they don't see a lot of boats there. Is there a particular issue there? What's going on?
There's not an issue. You know, we invite people to come and bring their boats to downtown. You cannot dock overnight. I don't know if that's a deterrent. I think there's some design flaws that we will be fixing in those docks, like the cleats aren't strong enough to... So we'll be fixing those as we go through it.
One other specific you've had to deal with in your first year, Mother Nature made you deal with it. The city's water supply, concerns about using surface supplies, not being able to tap into deeper sources of water and the aquifers. What is being done to remedy that? What really can be done? Because it's an enormously costly proposition, and yet it had real impact for this city last year. Could again, depending on what Mother Nature does this year.
Well, it certainly did have impact. We are happy that we've had so much rain. It's been a fairly wet winter. But we do have plans. We know that we have to have additional sources of water. We know that we have to have more storage of that water. We will continue to be a surface water source water system. That means that the water we use comes from the rainwater. We catch it, we capture it at Grassy Waters. That's why Grassy Waters is such a critical asset to it. We catch our water there, we bring that water into our water system. If Clear Lake, which is right here, is where we take the water from into our plant. The bottom of Clear Lake is sort of bumpy, and we have learned that if we change our intake into one of the troughs, the lower parts, we will be able to get more water out of Clear Lake and into our water treatment plant. So that's sort of a no-brainer. We're going to do that. We have been taking water from the C-17 canal and putting it in the C-51. This water would have gone out to tide before, so we're capturing it and we're able to use it in our water system. We're getting almost 40 million gallons a day out of that, which is about what our water use is.
So much to cover on the political waterfront here, and I wanted to ask you, because I'd be remiss if I didn't before we let you go. You've talked recently about looking holistically at everything from the waterfront to City Place to the needs on the Tamarind Avenue corridor. With money so tight, we heard just last week about community block development grant money being cut for cities to the south. Is that something you all are going to feel a big impact from in terms of cutbacks? If so, how much? And how does that fit into the view you just recently expressed about wanting to do more so that all sectors of the city are moving up?
Right. We are going to take a cut in our black grant. I can't tell you how big at this point. However, we are looking for other sources. We're looking for grants. We're looking for public-private partnerships. We're doing what we can to augment. And we're also charging people who live in the city, challenging them to say, what can you do to help us? What ideas do you have? We have a website, WPB.org/ideas. Give us your ideas. Give us your thoughts. If you want to help, we're taking volunteers. We have a volunteer website where you can sign up and help us in the city. So we're looking at every option we can.
Is the teacher turned city CEO having fun?
Some days.
Most days?
Most days. It's a great city. We have great employees, people who work so hard in our city hall, and they work for the people. You know, we work for the neighbors and the residents of West Palm Beach.
Mayor, we know we only scratched the surface in what is a huge, growing, and dynamic city, but we thank you so much for taking time to share some of your thoughts with us on these issues, and we hope we'll have you back soon to talk yet again.
My
Mayor
pleasure.
Jeri Muoio, West Palm Beach, thank you so much for being with us. And coming up next, our political roundtable takes on the issues of the week. Back in a moment. Now for our roundtable with News Channel 5 political analyst and coordinator of the American Studies program at Lynn University, Robert Watson. Doctor, thanks for being with us. And Brian Crowley, author of the CrowleyPoliticalReport.com and one of the veteran political reporters in this state. We thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. Interesting.
That's a polite way of saying that you're old. You've been here a while.
Well, he's got plenty of company at this table, Robert. But I digress. The economy, of course, issue number 1, 2, and 3 in any election it will be this fall. We got some good news this week. The stock market, buoying confidence, hitting the 13,000 mark at one point, dropped back a bit, but there's a lot of hope that it portends for a better future, more confidence as you take a look there. The bad news is a lot of pain for pocketbooks, gas prices becoming a major issue. Republicans are saying they're going to make it a talking point. I saw an article last week. They sent lawmakers home, said whenever you go home, talking about gas prices, pain at the pump, $4 a gallon gas, near or here or on the horizon. Some saying even $5 a gallon, places like California, perhaps this summer. President Obama in Miami late last week to talk about gas prices and really the larger issue of energy policy. So again, you've got competing issues about where it takes this economy. Let's begin with you, Dr. Watson. What are your thoughts as this all plays out in terms of the political context?
Well, I think you're spot on, Michael. It's going to be about the economy, issue 1, 2, and 3, unless if some unforeseen international crisis blows up, a war in Syria or Israel hitting Iran or something. It will be about the economy. We seem to take a step forward and take a step back. Almost every economic measure that was flatlined does seem to be rebounding. And the stock market,
the president and the poll
darn right it has. He's come up several points in the last few weeks, and he's separated himself with the head-to-head matchups with Romney, with Santorum, with Gingrich. He's got a comfortable lead over all of them now. However, while you take a step forward with the stock market, now we're worried about gas prices. It almost seems to be a perfect storm with respect to gas prices. They almost always seem to go up during a presidential election year. They always go up in the summer, and that's around the corner. And then also we've seen several major refineries are taken offline. Terrible timing by the energy companies, but they were old, antiquated. And in the war, I mean, the issue in Iran with boycotts on Iran, sanctions on Iran, that is oil that's not flowing into the Western markets. Right. So all this is affecting gas prices, probably beyond the president's immediate control.
And Brian, your take. I know when you read the White House sense of the matter, advisors privately are saying, wow, this is an issue we can't control, and yet it's one that worries us. Your take?
Well, and they should be worried. You know, there's nothing that affects every voter more than pulling up to that gas station and paying more than they think they can afford for gasoline. And if these gas prices hit $4.50, $5 in September, October, as we get closer to the election, I think it not bode well for Obama. It certainly could hurt the economy, and the good stock market we've seen in the first couple months this year could tank. And I think it's also very interesting that when he was in Miami last week, He talked about drilling. He talked about gas prices. He knows it's an issue. And he also said on Thursday that, you know, if Republicans think the way to get out of this crisis is only by drilling, they're wrong, and they're fooling people by saying that. They're clearly very sensitive to this issue and trying to position themselves in what may be a very expensive summer at the gas station.
It's going to make debates about things like the Keystone Pipeline from Canada to Texas also take on new meaning. But I would want to ask, we tend to hyper-focus sometimes on the presidential politics. As you look at these same issues and put the template over the congressional races, the U.S. Senate race, same feeling about what it's going to mean and who can convince voters that they're doing the most for their pocketbook in times that on one day, good news, one day, bad news.
Absolutely. You know, Tip O'Neill, the former Speaker of the House from Massachusetts, was famous for saying all politics is local. These days, it seems that all politics is national. Whatever economic trends are happening nationally are percolating down. And your interview with the mayor of West Palm Beach, she's facing tough financial decisions because the money's not trickling down from the federal government anymore.
Block grant money for communities.
Bingo. It's easy to make calls for cuts at the federal level, but where the rubber meets the road at the local level, people are hurting. And Brian's spot on with people pull up to that gas pump. You don't need to be an economist to realize how it's hurting you. Plus, we're a petroleum-based society, and every product needs to get to the marketplace in a truck. So we could have the risk of inflation. And in Florida, our tourism monies this summer, if tourism is down this summer, it's going to hurt Florida, a state that can barely afford a bad tourism season.
Final quick thought.
I think it depends on the level of the gas prices to whether or not it impacts a congressional race. I think by itself it doesn't impact a congressional race. But I'm also a guy that many years ago predicted with great certainty that gas prices would never hit $1 a gallon, because if they did, people would rebel. So I'm hesitant to predict what people might say.
Showing how veteran you are in this business, how veteran.
The beard was once red, too.
Let's talk a little bit. Again, we tend to focus so much on the biggest race, the race for the White House. Talk about Bill Nelson. Talk about who you think at this point sets up as his more likely opponent. We tend to have not seen a lot of traction and a lot of coverage on that yet?
Well, last week was a bloody week in the U.S. Senate race. You know, George Lemieux and Connie Mack are the two candidates, serious candidates in this race. And you know, George Lemieux started describing Connie Mack as the Charlie Sheen of the race because 20 years ago he had a couple of bar fights and a couple of other unpleasant young man moments.
Financial issues out of his divorce,
financial
which
issues,
he acknowledged.
And of course, most people who have been divorced will recognize that financial issues are not uncommon in divorce. Then Connie Mack comes back saying that George Lemieux created Charlie Crist, who is an anathema to Republicans that will be voting in the primary.
Is this the year of intra-party fratricide? I mean, Bill Nelson, at least for the moment, has to be sitting there and say, thank you for writing my campaign ads, although he's going to have a lot of his own challenges. But
it's not a bad year so far for Bill Nelson. He's been able to sit on the sidelines and raise a boatload of money and watch these guys kill each other.
But big concerns for Bill Nelson as he looks toward November. He's got some big challenges himself to retain that seat.
Absolutely. I mean, Congress's approval numbers are in single digits in some polls, 9%. It's an historic low since we've been taking this kind of polling. So we're expecting to see potentially record turnover in both the House and the Senate this fall. Congress is dysfunctional. We've said before in this program that they've recused themselves from their Article I constitutional responsibility to legislate. So you could see people walking into polls saying, I'm throwing these bums out in Congress. So if that's the case, you could see some change. Moreover, the Republicans only need to pick up 4 seats in the U.S. Senate, and the Democrats are defending 23. Republicans are only defending 10 seats, and of those 23 Democratic seats, 5 of them are open. Nelson's was one of the key seats that the Republicans are eyeing up. The more that Mack and Lemieux go back and forth and you know, act like the presidential candidates, the better off Nelson is.
Interesting times ahead. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Back by popular demand, the Watson wrap-up.
A fitting Black History.
I need that.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for that. I need to
Onward.
Yeah, I'll give you 10% of all the nothing I make. But fitting Black History Month, the Smithsonian broke ground. Black History, African American History Museum, which will be the 19th museum for the Smithsonian. The money originally came from James Smithson, a British aristocrat who had never stepped foot on our soil, but was fascinated with our democracy and with the paradox of the treatment of African Americans. It's supposed to open up in 2015.
A teacher once and always. Thank you, sir.
Looking
Proudly closer.
Well, one of the big surprises last week occurred on Thursday when Mormonism raised up as a potential issue, and what we learned was that Marco Rubio was baptized Mormon while he lived in Nevada as a teenager. He's acknowledged it, his people have acknowledged it, and it's one of these sort of fascinating tidbits about somebody that everybody thought they knew. He was only involved in the religion for a few years, but it caused a great deal of stir last Thursday.
Campaign 2012. There's a lot of stirring going on.
Stay tuned. Gumbo.
Gentlemen, lots of spice. Gentlemen, thanks as always for being with us and your perspectives. Thank you for being with us on To The Point. Have a great evening and send us a comment on today's broadcast if you get a chance. Good day, everyone.